I was in my home office finishing a routine call with a lender, the kind where everyone talks in calm numbers and nothing feels urgent. My desk lamp threw a warm circle of light across a stack of printed term sheets, and the rest of the house was quiet enough that I could hear my refrigerator cycle on and off down the hall. My phone buzzed once. It was a text from my cousin, Maya. Family meeting at Lumen Grid HQ. They're splitting the company. I read it twice, slow. Not because the words were complicated, but because my brain didn't want to accept them. I hadn't been invited to any meeting, and splitting the company wasn't a phrase you used by accident. I put the phone face down, stared at the wood grain of my desk, and took one steady breath. My name is Rachel Kane. I'm 34, and I founded Lumen Grid Solar, a commercial solar equipment company I built from a rented bay in Tampa, Florida, into something real. I'm not dramatic about it. I'm proud, yes, but mostly I'm careful. I keep records. I keep backups. I keep things orderly because businesses don't stay standing on vibes. My phone buzzed again, and this time it wasn't Maya. An email from my brother, Evan Kane. Subject line, Lumen Grid Family Reorganization. For a second, I actually assumed it was some clumsy attempt at humor. Evan has never been subtle, and he's never been patient enough to learn how corporate structures work. I opened it anyway. The message was short, formal, almost rehearsed. It said that, as CEO, Evan had decided each family member would take responsibility for a branch of the company to protect the legacy. It referenced a family vote. It thanked everyone for their shared vision. I kept reading, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. My stomach tightened, not in panic, more like my body was bracing before my mind caught up. I scrolled back to the top and reread the first line. As CEO, I hadn't stepped down. I hadn't even hinted at stepping down. I'd been the only CEO Lumen Grid ever had. I didn't call him. Not yet. I didn't text Maya. I didn't send an all-staff message. I didn't do anything impulsive. Instead, I turned my chair back toward my laptop and logged into our internal admin portal, the one I rarely touched myself because my ops team handled most day-to-day functions. The login screen loaded like normal. I typed my username and password, the same combination I'd used for years, and hit enter. A red bar flashed across the top. Access denied. I tried again. Slower. No mistakes. Access denied. I stared at the screen, hands resting on the keyboard, not moving. The house felt quieter now, like the air had flattened. I could hear my own breathing, steady, and the faint click of the ceiling fan above me. I opened a separate window and pulled up the digital shareholder registry we stored in our compliance folder, something I'd insisted on keeping updated after our first big investor came in. It took a moment to load. When it did, the top line, the line that had always carried my name, looked wrong. The space where Rachel Kane, founder, majority owner, should have been, was blank. Not misspelled, not shifted, blank. That was the moment I understood it wasn't confusion. It wasn't a miscommunication. It wasn't even just arrogance. It was a coordinated move. And even then, I didn't feel the urge to shout or throw something. I just felt a slow, cold settling, like my mind had stopped asking, why would they do this, and started asking, how far did they go? My phone buzzed again, a new text from Maya. They're walking around like it's already theirs. I didn't respond right away. I opened my email archive and searched Evan's name, then my sister Lena's, then our mother Paula's. Old threads came up from years back, from when Lumen Grid was small and I was still working 15-hour days. There were messages I hadn't thought about in a long time. Comments that had landed like paper cuts back then, easy to dismiss when I was busy building. Now, seeing them again, they didn't feel small. They felt like a timeline. I sat very still, reading, scrolling, not reacting on the outside. Then I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a small notebook I kept for operational decisions, the kind with dates and checklists, nothing emotional. I flipped it open to a clean page and wrote one line at the top. What changed today? Then I waited a beat, listening to the quiet house, and started making a short list beneath it. The first thing I did was close my email, not because I was avoiding it, but because I didn't want to react inside the same window where someone else had been planting a story. I opened a fresh page in my notebook and wrote 3 names: Evan, Lena, Mom. Then, underneath, I wrote, "Who benefits?" and left it there for a moment. In the early days, my family treated Lumen Grid like a phase I'd grow out of. They showed up when it was convenient: holiday dinners, birthdays, the occasional "how's work?" But none of them ever asked about margins, contracts, equipment lead times, or the difference between booked revenue and collected revenue. They didn't speak the language of building something. Evan used to smirk when I talked about solar. He'd tilt his head like he was humoring me. I remember one Thanksgiving in my mid-20s. I'd brought my laptop to the kitchen table because a supplier in Texas was finally responding. Evan watched me refresh my inbox, then said almost casually, "It's cute you think you can compete with the big guys." No one corrected him. No one told him to stop. My mom just kept stirring gravy like she hadn't heard a thing. Back then, I let it slide because I was busy. When you're building a company, you don't have time to argue with people who have never built anything. You just keep working. That night in my office, I wasn't interested in old feelings, but I was interested in patterns. And the pattern was simple. They didn't support the work, but they wanted to be near the results. I looked at the timestamp on Evan's email. It had been sent about an hour earlier. That meant they'd moved quickly, fast enough that they believed I wouldn't notice until morning, or that I'd be too embarrassed to make a scene. The house was still quiet. Outside my window, the streetlight threw a pale stripe across the driveway. My desk lamp hummed softly. I could smell the faint, clean scent of printer paper and the coffee I'd forgotten to drink. I picked up my phone and called Nate, my operations director. He answered on the second ring, voice low, like he'd been expecting it. "Rachel," he said. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask how he was. I kept my voice even. "What's happening at the office?" There was a pause. Not long, but noticeable. I could hear a soft shuffle on his end, like he'd stepped into a hallway. "I thought you knew," he said finally. "A guy came in this afternoon. He said he was your former partner, Trent Wallace." My jaw tightened, but I didn't interrupt. Nate continued carefully. "He told reception you'd approved a family restructuring, said you were handing leadership over to Evan. He had paperwork, emails. He knew enough details to sound official." Trent Wallace. I hadn't heard that name in 2 years. Trent and I had built the first version of Lumen Grid together, when it was just the two of us in a rented bay with a forklift that liked to stall. We weren't enemies, exactly. We just didn't work the same way. He wanted speed and shortcuts. I wanted systems and clean lines. We split, legally, and I bought him out with clear terms. I'd paid every cent on schedule, and we signed everything in front of council. So if Trent was back, carrying paperwork, then someone had either forged documents or stolen access to files they shouldn't have. I asked Nate, "Did anyone let him into the server room?" "No," he said quickly. But he didn't need to. He was walking around like he had clearance. He spoke to a couple team leads. He told them you were unreachable and the changes were already logged. People got rattled. I stayed quiet, not because I didn't have words, but because silence keeps other people talking. Nate exhaled. "Rachel, I'm sorry. I should have called you the second he showed up." "You're calling now," I said. "That matters more than a speech." I glanced at my notebook again. What changed today? Under it, I wrote, "Trent reappeared. Evan email. Admin access revoked. Registry blank." Then I asked, "Has anyone changed locks? Codes? Building access?" "Security is the same as yesterday," Nate said. "But your admin profile is missing from the directory. IT noticed. They thought it was part of the reorg." That hit the way cold water hits. Not sharp, just immediate. Because it meant the story had been planted in multiple places at once. People weren't just confused, they'd been guided. I looked back at my laptop. at the login screen that had rejected me, and my mind did something calm and automatic. It stopped focusing on the betrayal and started focusing on control points, systems, evidence, sequence. I told Nate, "Listen carefully. No one touches the admin panel. No one changes permissions. No one fixes anything. If anyone asks, you say leadership is unchanged and you're waiting for me." He hesitated. "Are you coming in?" "Yes," I said. "But before I do, I need one thing." "What?" I turned my chair slightly and opened the folder where I kept my corporate documentation. Copies, not originals. My fingers moved steadily, not rushed. "I need you to tell me," I said, "who authorized Trent's visit? Who vouched for him?" Another pause. Then Nate said quietly, "Evan." I didn't react. I just wrote the word Evan again, this time underlined. When we hung up, I didn't pace. I didn't spiral. I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found the name I'd been avoiding for the last hour because I knew it would make everything real. Marla Benson, attorney. She'd drafted my founding documents and structured my buyout agreement with Trent. She was also the kind of person who didn't waste words. I tapped her name, held the phone to my ear, and waited for it to ring. She picked up. "Rachel?" she said, voice steady. "Tell me what happened." I glanced at the blank registry line again, then at my notebook. And I started with the facts. Marla didn't interrupt while I talked. That's one of the reasons I've kept her as counsel for years. She lets people reveal the shape of a problem before she touches it. I told her about the email, the admin lockout, the blank shareholder line, Trent's appearance, Evan's role in letting him in. When I finished, there was a short silence on the line. I could hear the faint tap of keys on her end, the sound of someone already pulling files. "Rachel," she said, "do you have the original incorporation documents with you?" "Yes," I said, "physical copies and scanned backups." "And the buyout agreement with Trent?" "Same." "Good," she said, "because whatever they've done digitally doesn't change ownership. It only creates confusion. Confusion is temporary." That word, temporary, settled something in my chest. Marla asked me to send her screenshots of the registry and the admin error message. I did, attaching them to a clean email thread with timestamps visible. Then she asked me to pull up the original cap table from the year we took our first outside investment. I found it in seconds. I'm methodical about records. Always have been. "Rachel," Marla said after a moment, "someone has uploaded altered documents to your system. I can see metadata conflicts already." "Altered how?" I asked. "Digitally," she said. "Your signature has been replicated. Not perfectly. Whoever did it understands the look, not the structure." I let that sink in. Forgery wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. And procedural mistakes leave trails. Marla continued. "I want you to do 3 things, in this order." I picked up my pen. "Step 1, she said. "Do not confront anyone yet. No calls, no texts. Let them continue believing their version is active." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Step 2, forward me every internal email, message, or notice related to this reorganization, even if it seems small." I opened a new folder and named it Audit. "Step 3, she said. "Come to my office with your originals. Tonight. We'll compare everything side by side." After we hung up, the house felt different. Not heavier, quieter, focused. I packed my bag carefully. Laptop, charger, the slim folder with my original contracts, the buyout agreement with Trent, still bearing both our signatures from years ago, inked in a conference room that smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Before I left, my phone buzzed again. A message from Maya. "They moved Evan into your office. He's using your desk." I read it once, then again. I didn't reply. Instead, I locked my laptop screen, turned off the desk lamp, and stood for a moment in the doorway of my office, listening to the low hum of the house. The refrigerator clicked off. Somewhere outside, a car passed. When I got to Marla's office downtown, the lights were still on. She was already waiting, files spread across her desk like she'd been preparing for this exact moment. We laid everything out, originals on one side, current system versions on the other. Marla didn't take long. "These," she said, tapping the digital printouts, "were uploaded within the last 48 hours. And this clause," she pointed to a transfer section, "doesn't exist in your real agreement." She slid the original toward me. "This is clean," she said. "You own 100% of Lumen Grid through your holding entity. No family provision, no transfer language, nothing ambiguous." She looked up at me. "They can't take what isn't theirs." I exhaled slowly. Then Marla pulled up something else on her screen, an internal email thread I hadn't been copied on. It was between Evan and Trent. Subject line, "Reorg timeline." I read silently. A few short messages. No emotion, just planning. Once records are updated, she's effectively out. She won't notice until it's operational. My name wasn't even used. Just she. Marla saved the thread to an encrypted drive. "This," she said calmly, "changes the tone of the conversation." I nodded. Not angry. Clear. Outside, the sky had darkened fully. Office buildings glowed against the night, neat and orderly. Marla closed the folder and said, "If they're at headquarters right now, we shouldn't wait." I picked up my bag, feeling the quiet weight of paper and proof inside it. "Then let's not," I said. And we headed for the door. The drive to headquarters took less than 15 minutes. Downtown traffic had thinned, and the streets felt unusually open, like the city was holding its breath. I didn't turn on music. I like silence when I'm thinking in steps. Step 1 was already done. Confirm ownership. Step 2 was containment. Step 3 would be presence. When we pulled into the Lumen Grid parking lot, I noticed something small but telling. Evan's car was parked in my usual spot, slightly crooked, like he hadn't bothered to straighten it. The building lights were still on, bright against the dark sky. Marla and I walked in without announcing ourselves. The security desk looked up, surprised, then relaxed when he saw me. "Evening, Rachel," he said. "Didn't know you were coming in." "I didn't either," I replied. "Who authorized after-hours access?" He hesitated. "Just long enough." "Evan," he said. I nodded once and kept walking. Down the hallway, I could hear voices, confident, overlapping, louder than necessary. The sound of someone explaining a plan they didn't fully understand. I recognized Evan's voice immediately. Lena's, too. They always spoke a little louder when they wanted to sound certain. I stopped outside the conference room and didn't go in right away. Through the glass, I saw Evan standing at the whiteboard, writing department names. Lena was seated, flipping through a printed packet that had my logo on the cover. My mother sat beside her, nodding occasionally. Trent leaned against the table, arms crossed, like he belonged there. I watched for a moment longer than necessary. Then I opened the door. The room quieted almost instantly. Conversations didn't stop mid-sentence so much as dissolve. Evan turned first, marker still in his hand. His smile appeared on reflex and faded just as quickly. "Rachel," he said. "This isn't—" Marla stepped in beside me and set her briefcase on the table. The sound was small but final. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. "This is my office," I said calmly. "And my company." Evan laughed once, short and sharp. "The family already decided. We explained everything." I looked at the whiteboard, then at the papers in front of Lena. "You explained your version," I said. "That's not the same thing." Marla opened her briefcase and placed the original incorporation documents on the table. She didn't slide them dramatically. She set them down neatly, aligning the corners. "These are the founding contracts," she said. "Signed, witnessed, and filed. Rachel Kane is the sole owner." Trent shifted his weight. Evan's smile tightened. "That's outdated," Evan said. "We updated the records." Marla nodded. "Yes, you uploaded altered documents. We've already isolated them." Silence pressed in, heavier now. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward them. The email thread between Evan and Trent sat open, timestamps visible. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't need to. Evan's face changed first. Not anger. Calculation. "This doesn't have to get ugly," he said. "We're family." I met his eyes, steady. "Then you should have acted like it," I said. I turned slightly and nodded toward the doorway. "Security," I said. "Please ask everyone who isn't employed by Lumen Grid to step outside." No shouting, no arguing. The guard moved immediately. My mother stood halfway, uncertain. Lena's face flushed. Trent gathered his papers too quickly, avoiding my gaze. Evan stayed seated. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. I closed my laptop. Then I said, "I'm correcting one." And I waited. No one moved at first. The security guard waited near the door, hands folded, posture neutral. Evan looked around the table like he was trying to decide whether confidence alone could still carry him through. It couldn't. The room had already shifted. Marla didn't speak. She didn't need to. She stood beside me, quiet and precise, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Evan finally pushed his chair back. Not fast, not slow. He stood the way people do when they're trying to keep dignity intact. "You're overreacting," he said. "This was always meant to be fair." I didn't challenge the word fair. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my bag and took out one more document, a single-page summary, dates, numbers, payment confirmations. "This is the record of the buyout," I said, placing it on the table. "Every payment to Trent, completed 3 years ago, signed and closed." Trent swallowed. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I turned slightly toward him. "You were paid in full," I said. "You confirmed it. You walked away." He nodded once, barely. Evan shifted. "That money came from the family." "It came from my holding account," I said, "which you've never had access to." My voice stayed level, almost conversational. I looked at my mother then. She hadn't spoken yet. She was watching the table, her hands folded, eyes moving between the papers like she hoped one of them would disappear. "You knew," I said to her, not accusing, just stating. She looked up, her lips parted. "We thought you wouldn't mind," she said softly. "You've done so well." I let that sit. Then I said, "Doing well doesn't mean surrendering control." The guard cleared his throat, gentle but present. "Ma'am," he said to my mother, "I'll need you to step outside." She hesitated, then stood. Lena followed, gathering her things with sharp movements. Her chair scraped the floor. She didn't look at me. Evan stayed seated. "You think this ends here?" he asked. I met his eyes. "I think this ends tonight." Marla finally spoke. "There will be a forensic audit," she said. "Any attempted transfer of funds, any misuse of credentials, any forged filings will be documented." Evan scoffed, but it sounded hollow. "You can't just erase us," he said. I closed my notebook, the soft thud deliberate. "I'm not erasing anyone," I said. "I'm restoring order." I nodded once to security. "Please escort them out." This time, Evan stood. As they left, papers clutched, voices lowered, confidence thinning. I didn't follow them with my eyes. I stayed where I was, one hand resting on the table, feeling the smooth surface beneath my palm. When the door closed, the room felt different. Not victorious, clear. Marla began gathering the documents, stacking them neatly. "Next," she said, "we lock everything down." I nodded. Outside the glass wall, the hallway lights hummed steadily. Inside, the noise was gone. And for the first time that night, I sat down. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about access. Marla opened her laptop and started making calls while I stayed seated, hands folded, listening to the quiet return to the building. The hum of the HVAC, the distant click of an elevator, normal sounds coming back into place. Within an hour, IT was on site. Passwords were reset first. Every admin credential, every elevated permission. Two-factor authentication rolled out across departments, no exceptions. We restricted remote access and froze any pending changes in the system logs. Nothing emotional, just procedure. Nate arrived shortly after, moving carefully, like someone walking into a room after a storm. "I should have verified," he said. "You will from now on," I replied. Not cold, final. We reviewed the audit together. Login times, IP addresses, file uploads. It was all there, laid out cleanly. Trent's access had been reactivated using credentials Evan shouldn't have had. The altered documents had been uploaded late at night, then quietly referenced in internal messages as if they'd always existed. By midnight, the story inside the company was simple again. Leadership unchanged. Ownership confirmed. No restructuring. I walked the floor myself, stopping at each department: production, sales, engineering. I didn't give speeches, I didn't over-explain. "I'm still here," I said. "The work continues." People nodded. Some looked relieved. Some looked embarrassed. All of them went back to work. Around 1 a.m, Marla received confirmation that no funds had been moved. Accounts were intact. Investors hadn't signed anything. One of them, Mr. Collins, emailed directly to confirm he'd ignored Trent's outreach and wanted to hear only from me. That mattered more than sympathy. The next step took longer. 6 months later, a legal notice arrived. Evan, Lena, my mother, and Trent, represented by a firm I didn't recognize, claimed entitlement to equity based on a verbal family agreement. I read it once. Then I called Marla. She wasn't surprised. The case didn't last long. In court, there were no raised voices, just documents, dates, signatures, the original contracts, the email thread where Evan and Trent had outlined the plan in plain language. The judge reviewed everything quietly, then dismissed the case and ordered them to cover legal costs. That was it. No dramatic ending, no apologies, no reconciliation. Back at Lumen Grid, operations kept moving. New contracts came in, old ones renewed. The company didn't wobble the way people expect it to when something internal breaks. It steadied. One afternoon, months later, I received a message from Evan. A few angry sentences, accusations, words that no longer landed. I deleted it. My mother tried calling the following week. I let it ring. Some boundaries don't need explanations. By the end of the year, Lumen Grid's valuation crossed a threshold that made industry news. I didn't celebrate loudly. I updated the compliance folder. I backed up the contracts again. That night, alone in my office, I locked the original incorporation documents into the safe and turned the dial slowly until it clicked. Then I shut off the lights and went home. A year later, my mornings looked ordinary again. I'd make tea before sunrise, stand at the kitchen counter, and watch the light come in slowly through the window. No notifications, no alerts. Just the quiet clink of a mug and the soft sound of the kettle cooling down. At the office, things were steady in a way that didn't need announcing. Systems worked, people did their jobs, meetings started on time and ended when decisions were made. I kept my routines simple: weekly reviews, monthly audits, quarterly backups. Order has a calming effect when you respect it. Every now and then, I'd hear things about my family through other people. Social media posts, complaints, vague accusations framed like misunderstandings. I didn't respond. Silence wasn't avoidance anymore. It was maintenance. One afternoon, I stayed late to reorganize a cabinet I'd been ignoring. Old folders, retired vendor contracts, outdated procedures that no longer applied. I shredded what wasn't needed, labeled what was, and slid the rest into clean drawers. When I was done, I wiped down the desk, turned off the lamp, and stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up quietly, after you stop negotiating with people who don't respect limits. Before I left, my phone buzzed. It was a short message from someone I'd worked with years ago, another founder, different industry, different city. The message was careful, almost hesitant. "I heard what you went through. Something similar is happening to me. I don't know where to start." I read it once. Then I set the phone down. Some stories don't need to be rushed, and some people just need to know they're not imagining things. I locked the office, stepped outside, and let the door close behind me. The air was warm. The street was quiet. Everything was exactly where it should be. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it felt familiar, you're not alone. If you found it calming, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. It helps more than you think. And if you're comfortable, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read those. 2 more stories are coming up next that a lot of people have been waiting for. Take your time. I'll see you there.